On March 24, 1945, along the eastern bank of the Rhine River near Wesel, Germany, Winter Officer Klaus Hoffmann maintained his position in a foxhole, observing the morning mist as it gradually lifted from the water's surface. His machine gun crew had successfully defended this strategic location for 3 consecutive days, consistently repelling American forces attempting to expand their established bridgehead across what remained of Germany's final significant natural defensive barrier. The initial indication of what was approaching came through auditory signals rather than visual confirmation. A profound mechanical rumbling reached the German positions, possessing characteristics that seemed inconsistent with typical river vessels. The sound proved too substantial for standard patrol boats and demonstrated excessive speed for conventional barges. As the fog continued to dissipate, Hoffmann witnessed something that fundamentally challenged his understanding of military capabilities. Approaching across the Rhine at approximately 35 miles per hour came what appeared to be a Sherman tank turret mounted upon a speedboat hull. The 75mm gun rotated with hydraulic precision, its barrel adjusting its angle downward toward the German defensive positions. Before Hoffmann could effectively alert his fellow soldiers, the weapon discharged. The high-explosive round detonated approximately 20 meters from his position, propelling shrapnel through the air with lethal velocity. As he pressed himself firmly into the muddy ground, 3 additional vessels of this unprecedented design emerged from the mist, their turrets rotating independently of their hulls while executing maneuvers at speeds that exceeded anything the German naval forces could achieve. These vessels represented the LCM-6 landing craft mechanized, equipped with complete Sherman tank turrets. American engineering ingenuity had successfully transformed modest landing craft into floating armored platforms that German forces would subsequently designate as Flussdämonen, translating to river demons. What Hoffmann and his comrades were experiencing marked the culmination of American naval innovation that would fundamentally transform riverine warfare methodology. The conceptual foundation for these vessels emerged from operational necessity rather than predetermined strategic planning. During the spring of 1944, as Allied forces conducted preparations for the invasion of France, naval planners identified a critical deficiency in amphibious operational capabilities. While landing craft could successfully transport troops to beach landing zones, they demonstrated insufficient firepower to effectively suppress fortified enemy positions during the approach phase. The solution, when examined retrospectively, appeared remarkably straightforward. If landing craft possessed the capacity to transport tanks, logical extension suggested the possibility of transforming the landing craft itself into a tank-like weapons platform. Lieutenant Commander John Bulkley, who had already achieved recognition for his PT boat operations conducted in the Philippines, presented this radical modification concept during planning sessions held at Norfolk Naval Base. His proposal involved taking the LCM-6 landing craft, removing its bow ramp assembly, and installing a complete Sherman tank turret equipped with full traverse capability and integrated fire control systems. Naval architects initially declared the concept technically impossible, citing concerns that the additional weight would compromise vessel stability, that the weapon's recoil forces would potentially capsize the craft, and that the resulting complexity would render maintenance operations impractical. Bulkley maintained his advocacy for the project despite these technical objections. On May 15, 1944, at the Higgins Industries boatyard located in New Orleans, Andrew Higgins personally authorized construction of the initial prototype. The same individual who had revolutionized amphibious warfare through his landing craft designs now directed his attention toward creating an entirely unprecedented vessel type, one capable of delivering devastating firepower while maintaining speeds that rendered it an extremely difficult target to engage effectively. The engineering challenges presented by this project proved formidable in their complexity. A complete Sherman turret, including the gun assembly, ammunition stores, and crew positions, weighed approximately 7,000 pounds. The LCM-6 had never been designed to accommodate such concentrated weight positioned high above its waterline. Higgins engineers addressed this fundamental problem through comprehensive modification of the hull structure. They reinforced the keel with additional steel plating, incorporated buoyancy tanks along the vessel's sides, and lowered the engine mounting positions to reduce the overall center of gravity. Most critically, they designed a specialized mounting system that absorbed the 75mm gun's recoil through a combination of hydraulic buffer mechanisms and structural flexibility principles. The entire vessel would experience rearward motion when the gun discharged, but the kinetic energy would dissipate throughout the hull structure rather than generating capsizing forces. The initial test firing conducted on June 3, 1944, nearly concluded in catastrophic failure. The gun's recoil drove the bow downward with such severity that water began flowing over the vessel's sides. Engineers responded by adding counterweights to the stern section and implementing modifications to the recoil system. The second test demonstrated success, while the third test exceeded all established expectations. The turret could execute a complete 360-degree traverse while the vessel maneuvered at speed, and the gun could be fired during movement with acceptable accuracy at ranges extending to 1,000 yards. Production commenced immediately following successful testing. Higgins Industries, already manufacturing landing craft at rates that astonished German intelligence services, integrated the turret boats into their existing assembly lines. Each craft required 140 hours of specialized labor beyond the standard LCM-6 construction time. The turrets originated from Sherman tanks that had sustained damage beyond economical repair during combat operations. American salvage operations throughout Europe systematically removed usable turrets from disabled Shermans, transported them back to New Orleans, and witnessed their transformation into components for riverine craft. By September 1944, production had yielded 32 completed turret boats that were subsequently shipped to the European theater. The United States Navy designated these vessels as LCM-6T, with the T denoting turret configuration, though crews employed various informal designations including turret boats, gunboats, floating tanks, and increasingly, after German prisoners began employing the terminology, river demons. The initial combat deployment occurred during Operation Martin Garden in September 1944. The British Second Army's advance toward Arnhem required crossing multiple rivers and canals against determined German resistance. 8 turret boats received assignment to support these crossing operations, functioning under British tactical control while maintaining American crews. On September 20th, near Nijmegen, Staff Sergeant Robert Henderson commanded one of these vessels during the attempted crossing of the Wall River. His after-action report, preserved within the National Archives, provides the first comprehensive account of turret boat combat effectiveness. At 1400 hours, his vessel approached the north bank at maximum speed, approximately 30 knots. German positions initiated fire from fortified buildings. The turret traversed while the vessel maintained speed, and the gunner achieved hits on 3 separate positions with 5 rounds fired. German return fire proved ineffective due to the vessel's speed and the substantial difficulty of tracking a moving target at close range. The psychological impact on German defenders proved equally significant as the physical damage inflicted. Veterans of Eastern Front operations possessed experience with Soviet river crossing attempts and expected slow, vulnerable vessels that could be systematically destroyed with concentrated fire. The appearance of American craft racing across water at speeds exceeding 35 miles per hour while firing tank guns with full accuracy fundamentally shattered their tactical assumptions. Obergefreiter Hans Müller, captured during the Nijmegen operation, informed interrogators that initial impressions suggested torpedo boats due to the exceptional speed. Recognition of the turret boat rotating created cognitive dissonance, as the combination seemed technically impossible. The question persisted regarding how something moving so rapidly could carry such substantial weaponry. German anti-tank guns could not effectively track these vessels, as the time required to aim at their position resulted in the target having already moved to a different location. The turret boats encountered their definitive proving ground during the Rhine crossings of March 1945. By this operational phase, production had increased substantially, with 64 vessels available for Operation Plunder, the massive crossing operation that would transport Allied forces into Germany's heartland. The Rhine presented challenges fundamentally different from any previous river operation. At Wesel, where the primary American crossing occurred, the river extended nearly 1,000 feet in width, with currents reaching 6 knots. German defenders had fortified the eastern bank with interconnected bunkers, anti-tank gun positions, and pre-registered artillery coordinates. Traditional river crossing doctrine prescribed artillery preparation, smokescreen deployment, and acceptance that sufficient landing craft would survive the crossing to establish a bridgehead. The turret boats offered a revolutionary alternative approach. They would spearhead the assault, racing ahead of troop-carrying craft to suppress German positions with direct fire while moving too rapidly for effective counter-battery fire. On March 24, 1945, at 0430 hours, 16 turret boats formed the vanguard of the Ninth Army's assault across the Rhine. Lieutenant Commander James Patterson commanded the flotilla from the lead vessel, which his crew had designated River Demon, thereby embracing the German nickname with distinctly American pride. The crossing initiated in darkness, with artificial moonlight provided by searchlights reflected from cloud cover. The turret boats accelerated to maximum speed, their gray marine diesel engines producing substantial noise as they raced across the dark water. At 400 yards from the eastern shore, German positions erupted with defensive fire. Tracer rounds created geometric patterns across the river as machine guns and anti-aircraft weapons attempted to track the fast-moving targets. Patterson's gunner, Corporal Michael Torres, engaged the first bunker at 350 yards while the vessel continued accelerating. His initial round struck low, generating a geyser of displaced mud. His second round entered the firing slit, and the bunker exploded from secondary detonations of stored ammunition. Torres traversed right and fired again, achieving another direct hit. The turret boats had closed to 200 yards while still accelerating. Their speed rendered them nearly impossible targets in the darkness. The 16 vessels distributed across a 1,000-yard front, each engaging multiple targets. High explosive rounds designed for Sherman tanks proved devastatingly effective against fortified positions. German defenders, anticipating conventional landing craft moving at 8 to 10 knots, could not adjust their fire rapidly enough to track targets moving at 35 knots. Technical Sergeant William Bradford, commanding a turret boat on the flotilla's left flank, recorded the engagement in his operational log. The vessels covered the distance in approximately 90 seconds from the start line to the beach. During that interval, his gunner fired 11 rounds, achieving 7 confirmed hits on bunkers and fortified positions. German return fire remained continuous but largely ineffective. The speed created an almost invulnerable sensation, as enemy forces were shooting at previous positions rather than current locations. The turret boats reached the eastern shore and immediately reversed course, continuing to engage targets as they withdrew. This tactical approach, developed through earlier operations, maximized their effectiveness while minimizing exposure duration. Rather than remaining as stationary targets, they executed multiple high-speed passes, firing during each run before infantry landing craft arrived. During the Rhine crossing operation, the turret boats completed an average of 4 passes each before the first wave of troops reached the shore. Post-battle assessment credited them with destroying 47 confirmed bunkers, 23 artillery positions, and 31 machine gun nests. More significantly, they created gaps in German defensive fire that enabled troop-carrying craft to land with minimal casualties. Hauptmann Friedrich von Tauben, commanding the 326th Volksgrenadier Regiment defending the Wesel sector, survived the crossing and provided detailed testimony during post-war interviews. The American vessels were unlike anything encountered in training or operational experience. German doctrine assumed river crossing forces would be vulnerable during their approach. These vessels made vulnerability impossible through sheer speed and firepower. Effective counter-tactics could not be developed because the vessels never remained in one position sufficiently long to engage effectively. The technical specifications of the LCM-6T explained its revolutionary performance characteristics. The base LCM-6 measured 56 feet in length with a 14-foot beam. Powered by twin gray marine 6.4HN9 diesel engines, producing a combined 450 horsepower, it could reach 35 miles per hour in calm water conditions. The addition of the Sherman turret reduced maximum speed to approximately 32 miles per hour, but enhanced combat effectiveness exponentially. The turret itself represented a complete unit removed from M4A3 Sherman medium tanks. It included the 75mm M3 gun, coaxial 30 caliber Browning machine gun, complete fire control systems, and ammunition storage for 71 main gun rounds and 4,750 machine gun rounds. The turret retained its full 360-degree traverse capability and elevation range from -10 to +25 degrees. Crew composition reflected the hybrid nature of the vessel. The boat commander typically held rank as a Navy lieutenant or senior chief petty officer with small craft operational experience. The helmsman and engineer originated from naval landing craft backgrounds. The turret crew, consisting of gunner, loader, and sometimes a dedicated commander, frequently comprised Army personnel trained on Sherman tanks. This unusual combination of Navy seamanship and Army gunnery created a unique tactical capability. The operational doctrine developed through combat experience emphasized the turret boat's strengths while acknowledging inherent vulnerabilities. Maximum effectiveness derived from high-speed approaches with active gunnery. The vessels excelled at suppressing fortified positions that might otherwise devastate slower landing craft. They provided mobile artillery support for troops once ashore, racing along rivers to engage targets as they emerged. However, the turret boats possessed significant limitations. The armor, essentially non-existent compared to actual tanks, meant any significant hit would likely prove catastrophic. The high profile made them conspicuous targets. The specialized nature meant maintenance required both naval and armor expertise. Most critically, rough water severely degraded their effectiveness. Waves exceeding 3 feet rendered accurate gunnery nearly impossible and increased capsizing risk. German attempts to counter the turret boats revealed the difficulty of developing effective responses to revolutionary weapons. Initial efforts focused on increasing anti-boat defenses along river lines. They deployed additional anti-aircraft guns, reasoning that weapons designed for fast-moving aircraft might successfully track fast-moving boats. This approach proved partially effective, but consumed limited anti-aircraft resources needed against Allied air superiority. Some German units attempted positioning anti-tank guns for direct fire against crossing forces. The 88mm flak guns proved capable of destroying turret boats when hits were achieved. However, the brief engagement windows and boat speed rendered achieving hits difficult. A Panzerjäger report from April 1945 noted that engaging the American gunboats required leading the target by approximately 50 meters at 500-meter range. The brief exposure time often meant only one shot was possible before the boat moved beyond effective range. Mining rivers became another German tactical approach. Contact mines and influence mines could potentially destroy the fast boats where guns could not. American responses included employing the turret boats themselves for mine clearance operations. Racing through suspected minefields at high speed while firing at likely mine positions with the main gun proved surprisingly effective. The gun's concussion could detonate pressure mines, while the boat speed meant contact mines experienced difficulty triggering before the vessel passed. As Allied forces penetrated deeper into Germany during April 1945, the turret boats discovered new operational roles. They became river patrol vessels, interdicting German traffic on the Rhine, Elbe, Danube, and dozens of smaller waterways. Their combination of speed and firepower rendered them ideal for destroying bridges, attacking barges, and eliminating ferry crossings that German forces might utilize for retreat or reinforcement. On April 15, 1945, 3 turret boats operating on the Elbe River near Magdeburg encountered an enemy convoy attempting to evacuate equipment across the river. The engagement demonstrated the vessel's effectiveness in this role. Lieutenant Robert Chen commanded the lead boat. His report states that at 1800 hours, observation revealed an enemy convoy of approximately 20 vehicles attempting a ferry crossing. Engagement initiated at 800 yards. The first pass destroyed the ferry and 3 vehicles. The second pass destroyed a fuel truck, creating secondary explosions that damaged additional vehicles. Enemy return fire remained minimal due to surprise and vessel speed. The entire engagement lasted approximately 4 minutes. Estimated enemy losses included 12 to 15 vehicles destroyed, the ferry sunk, and the crossing operation terminated. The psychological warfare value of the turret boats extended beyond their direct combat effectiveness. German troops defending river lines understood these vessels could appear without warning, deliver devastating fire, and vanish before effective response was possible. This created a defensive paranoia that degraded overall combat effectiveness. Units were compelled to maintain constant vigilance against possible turret boat attacks, diverting attention from other threats. American propaganda exploited this fear. Leaflets dropped on German positions featured images of turret boats with text proclaiming that the river demons were coming and resistance was futile, encouraging surrender to preserve life. While the effectiveness of such psychological operations proves difficult to quantify precisely, prisoner interrogations frequently mentioned fear of American gunboats as a significant factor in decisions to surrender rather than defend river positions. The Pacific Theater also witnessed turret boat deployment, though in smaller numbers and different tactical contexts. 42 vessels were shipped to the Southwest Pacific area in late 1944 and early 1945. They operated in the Philippines, supporting General MacArthur's island-hopping campaign, and in operations along rivers in Burma under British command. The environment presented different challenges. Narrow jungle rivers restricted the speed advantage that had rendered the boats so effective in Europe. Dense vegetation along riverbanks provided cover for Japanese defenders equipped with anti-tank weapons. However, the turret boats discovered a niche in supporting amphibious assaults on Japanese-held islands and providing fire support for troops advancing along coastal areas. On January 29, 1945, during the Luzon campaign, 6 turret boats supported the landing at San Antonio. Facing fortified Japanese positions along the beach, the vessels made repeated high-speed passes while marine landing craft approached. The Japanese forces, expecting only conventional naval gunfire support, were unprepared for the accurate direct fire that tank guns provided from mobile platforms positioned just offshore. Corporal James Wilson, a turret gunner in the Pacific Theater, described the difference from European operations. In Europe, operations involved racing across wide rivers against German positions on distant shores. In the Philippines, operations frequently occurred in narrow channels or just offshore from beaches, sometimes within 100 yards of Japanese bunkers. Speed proved less important than the ability to maneuver quickly and the devastating effect of 75mm high-explosive rounds against fortifications. Production statistics revealed the scale of American commitment to this innovative weapon system. Between June 1944 and May 1945, Higgins Industries produced 147 turret boats. Additional production came from Defoe Shipbuilding Company in Bay City, Michigan, which constructed 63 units, and from Chris-Craft Corporation in Holland, Michigan, which produced 41 units. Total production reached 251 vessels by war's end. The cost per unit reflected the specialized nature of the vessels. A standard LCM-6 cost approximately $35,000. The addition of the turret system, reinforced hull, hydraulic systems, and fire control equipment brought the total cost to approximately $68,000 per turret boat. This compared favorably to a complete Sherman tank at $64,000 or a PT boat at $400,000. The turret boat represented excellent value for its unique capabilities. True training developed into a specialized program. The Navy established training facilities at Camp Carabel, Florida, where boat handling in rough water conditions could be practiced in the Gulf of Mexico. Gunnery training for turret crews occurred at Fort Knox, Kentucky, utilizing the same facilities that trained Sherman tank crews. The combined training program required 8 weeks, producing crews qualified in both seamanship and armored warfare principles. Maintenance proved more challenging than initially anticipated. The saltwater environment, especially in Pacific operations, corroded the tank turret mechanisms originally designed for land use. The hydraulic systems required constant attention to prevent leaks and pressure loss. The combination of naval diesel engines and Army gun mechanisms meant that proper maintenance required expertise in both fields. Technical Sergeant David Miller, a maintenance supervisor at a forward repair facility in Germany, recorded the challenges encountered. Each boat essentially required 2 different skill sets. The hull, engines, and navigation equipment demanded Navy-trained mechanics. The turret, gun systems, and fire control needed Army armor mechanics. Achieving both skill sets in one location often proved difficult. Some Navy mechanics received training on turret basics, and some Army mechanics learned engine fundamentals, but the learning curve remained steep. Despite maintenance challenges, the turret boats achieved remarkable operational readiness rates. Naval records indicate that during the Rhine crossing operations of March 1945, 92% of assigned turret boats were operational. This compared favorably to Sherman tank availability rates of approximately 85% and conventional landing craft rates of 95%. German technical intelligence made determined efforts to capture an intact turret boat for comprehensive evaluation. The revolutionary nature of the weapon demanded thorough understanding. However, the boat's speed made capture extremely difficult. Several damaged boats were recovered from the Rhine, but all had sustained damage that prevented full assessment of their capabilities. On April 7, 1945, German forces finally captured a largely intact turret boat near Magdeburg. A fortunate artillery strike had disabled one engine, allowing the crippled vessel to drift into German-controlled territory before the crew could execute scuttling procedures. The subsequent German technical report provides fascinating insight into their assessment. The report stated that the American vessel represented innovative thinking applied to tactical problems. The combination of high-speed hull and armored fighting vehicle turret created capabilities that neither vessel type possessed independently. The engineering solutions to weight, recoil, and control challenges demonstrated American industrial sophistication. The weapon's effectiveness derived not from superior individual components, but their integration into a new combat system. This approach to weapons development might explain American success across multiple combat domains. The report concluded with a sobering assessment. Development of effective countermeasures appeared unlikely given current German industrial capacity and the late stage of the war. The recommendation suggested that defensive forces avoid riverine defenses where these vessels might be employed. As the war in Europe concluded in May 1945, the turret boats discovered their final role as occupation patrol craft. They monitored river traffic, prevented unauthorized crossings, and provided visible symbols of Allied power. Their distinctive silhouettes became familiar sights on German waterways during the summer of 1945. The Pacific War's conclusion in August 1945 left many turret boats in theater without combat roles. Some remained in service for occupation duties in Japan and the Philippines. Others were utilized for mine clearance operations, their speed and maneuverability proving valuable in dangerous waters. The majority were gradually withdrawn from service and scrapped during 1946 and 1947. Only 7 turret boats survived the post-war scrapping programs. 5 remain in museum collections, carefully preserved as examples of American wartime innovation. The National World War II Museum in New Orleans displays one of the original Higgins-built vessels. The National Museum of the United States Navy at the Washington Navy Yard maintains another. The remainder are distributed among smaller military museums across the United States. The combat record of the LCM-6T remains impressive, despite the relatively small numbers deployed and the late introduction to combat operations. Verified statistics from Naval Historical Center records document confirmed destruction of 193 fortified positions, 89 artillery emplantments, 147 machine gun nests, 63 bridges, and 41 various watercraft. These numbers represent only confirmed eliminations where photographic or multiple witness documentation exists. Actual numbers were likely significantly higher. Casualty statistics present an equally compelling narrative. Of the 251 turret boats produced, 37 were lost to enemy action, representing a 14.7% loss rate that compares very favorably to other assault vessels. Of the crews serving on turret boats, 63 men were killed in action and 141 wounded.